if you happen to be in a big city that would have a government-controlled church, you might be able to get a Bible. But I still take Bibles with me when I go, simply because I don't want to be witnessing to somebody telling them about the Lord and they'd be open to having a Bible and say, well, now if you go to the government-controlled church down there in whatever part of the city, you could get a Bible. No, I want to be able to put something in their hands.
Right. Very good.
Any other question?
So you think you're going to be going back if
Oh.
they open the door?
If I'm at all able,
Yeah.
my situation probably is declining a little, and I know that I'm not going to be able to go much longer, but Dr. Gibson has this dream to, and I share it with him, that we should get somebody going with me who could take over knowing some of my contacts there and using them after I'm no longer able to go. So pray for that as well. That's something that...
Do they have seminary educations for ministers that want to do the work of the Lord there? Can you get educated that way, or does that have to be underground?
They have seminaries, but they're probably more communism taught in the seminaries than there is about the Lord. So, and they're full, of course, the communist people that are making sure things go their way. Of course, there's underground training, Christian training going on, and we've done what we could to support that.
Have you ever known personally Christians that were persecuted by the government?
Oh yes. Oh yes, definitely. In many situations. If you have the chance to read the book, The Heavenly Man, get it and read it. It will open your eyes. If you haven't read that book before, it will open your eyes to persecution in China. It's written by a Chinese evangelist that went through a lot.
Is he still alive?
As far as I know, yes.
Still in Germany?
I don't think he's still in Germany, but I can't remember if I think he's either U.S. or Germany. I'm not sure just which.
The last time he was in Germany.
Yeah, he went first to Germany, but he has worked in the
We
U.S.
have a man that comes to our church here on Sunday nights that was working as teaching English in China, and he met that man, the Heavenly Man.
Oh, really?
He wrote that book.
I think my sister has met him. I'm not really sure about that.
That's great.
But anyway, yes, that's a good book to read about China.
Very good. Dr. Gibson. Thank you, Dr. Raspberry. I'm going to hand that microphone to him.
I will do that.
We'll do this in a very smooth way. This is Steve Gibson. He is the president of Pilgrim Holiness Mission and of the Evangelistic Faith Mission in Bedford, Indiana. He's a world travel center. He's on his third passport. And he has pictures. Let's see if we can get him to come on this.
Yeah. It's that here and
Yeah. Ron, you want to turn the lights off? Go overhead. That's just what he said.
well,
Thank you. Do you remember the password, Steve, or do you want us to come up with?
well, problem is that part is not even showing here on the screen. Let me,
It's up there, but not down there. That's funny. So it's just not what you see is what you get.
yeah, if you guys,
What you see is not what you got.
well, that was very inspiring to hear.
What is happening? With some other places.
It's been an interesting year.
Is it
Okay, that's on there.
Well, you got to go Robin eggs.
Okay. I don't know about you birds.
Well, we've all heard a lot about what life has been like with Corona, and I've started traveling again some. There have been a lot of changes. And you've heard the stories of the different precautions that don't make sense. I think the one that I ran into that was the strangest was when I was going through a drive-through in a restaurant, and they had a sign up that said, due to Corona precautions, we are not allowing customers to eat in their cars in the parking lot. Now, I have not figured that one out at all. I forget, it was there in Bloomington, or Indianapolis, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. That was a strange one. And of course, you've heard of how so many deaths are getting attributed to Corona, almost no matter what kind of cause it was. I heard of one lady, she asked her husband, can we spend the stimulus check on new clothes? And he said, if you lose some weight, and they counted his death as a Corona-related death. But it is exciting to see what is happening around the world, and a lot of places innovating, and it's really been good. There is a labor problem. Jesus observed that the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. And there are a lot of different numbers that we could look at, but I want to just give you one right now. At the current rate of mission work, 3 billion people will not hear the gospel before they die. And I know there's different numbers we can come up at with, depending on how you count. But I really think that the issue of the unreached is the thing that we ought to be grappling with in mission work more than anything else. There are a lot of things that are important, but there's nothing more important. There should not be any guiding fact more important than this one, the need of the unreached, those who have not heard the gospel, many even one time. And so I really think that should guide much of what we do. And there's a taxi company I like to use as an illustration because of the way they dealt with the labor problem. There's a taxi company that moves 5.5 million passengers every day. Now think about that. If we were going to start a taxi company in St. Louis or some big city, how many drivers would we hire? How many cars would we buy? But Uber did not buy cars. Instead, they said there are already cars there and people driving them. And so let's just hire drivers to drive their own cars and carry our passengers. And it has revolutionized the taxi industry, much to the chagrin of many of the older companies. Can we learn anything for missions from this? Because we've got a labor problem. And so rather than thinking we've got to go everywhere and we've got to find enough missionaries to send to cover the world and build churches there and train, I think we can learn something. Because we need many, many pastors, evangelists, and missionaries to reach the unreached. If we're going to look at this population of 3 billion, how many missionaries do we need? Okay, we know our Bible colleges, as much as I love them, are never going to produce the people that are needed to go reach 3 billion unreached. But I think like Uber, we can train the people that are close to the unreached. We can multiply these pastors and evangelists by providing training in the churches nearest the unreached.
Good.
This brings up a lot of issues, which we won't take time to get into a lot today, but I want to give you a lot of examples of places where we're doing this. But even in the most restricted countries, there are some churches. Near the unreached, many times you don't have to go extremely far to find churches. Sometimes those churches have existed for decades, not extremely far from unreached areas that have never heard the gospel one time. And a lot of times it's because those people, they know what they've experienced, but they don't know how to share their faith. They don't know how to answer questions. They don't know how to plant the church in another place. And if they got even a little bit of training, they feel like they have something to share. And we're seeing this happen. So I want to give you a bunch of examples of that today. Talk about Holiness Pilgrim Mission a little bit first. And we are building an institute in Haiti, and it's got the first level, first floor is on there now.
Great.
And but we don't want to just, I believe ministry training ought to be available everywhere the church exists. And so just building a central place doesn't do it. And so we have a couple young men. One of them is Ezekiel, who is traveling. He is full-time now to travel around and meet with churches and help them start training. He'll be doing seminars around the country, help them start training in their own churches. Another one is Wycliffe Mozart. Isn't that quite a name?
Yeah.
He is also, he was actually grew up in our orphanage in Haiti, and he is traveling now for us. And Holiness Pilgrim Mission has about 50 churches that are affiliated with us. So Ezekiel is traveling among them, and Wycliffe is traveling among the churches that are not. And so all kinds of churches out there that he's going to be visiting and helping them get started with training programs. Onus and Ghislaine Clermont they've gone as missionaries from Haiti to the Dominican Republic and started our first institute there. And there are about 1 million Haitians in the Dominican Republic, not much training provided for them. And so it is our goal to make this local, make this available for them everywhere. Over the ocean into Europe and Asia, and some great doors are opening there. Mostly what we are doing is helping to implement training in churches. Ukraine is where we started on that part of the world, and we have a really good team there, and so some numbers there that I'm really happy about. All the courses that have been done in English have been translated into Russian and Ukrainian. We actually printed the first Russian one before they printed the first English one. I was pretty proud of that. But 15,000 have been printed so far, at least in Ukraine. It's probably higher than that now. And at least 100 churches in Ukraine using the courses. And so we have a great team. Andre, the guy with the glasses, is our representative there. And now he's starting to get calls because Ukrainians and Russians have gone to a lot of different countries. And so he's starting to visit some of these other countries, and we have made him now an international representative to help go to these other places. That meeting right there actually was happening in Turkey. And the guy on that other side is a Ukrainian pastor. The one on the far left is Russian. The guy on the far right is from Moldova. So that was a pretty international meeting right there. And so that's what he's doing. And our dream is to make the training available throughout the Soviet Union. There are 15 nations. And so we began to visit them and make contacts there. In Moldova, we did not actually have to visit there. He came to meet us in Ukraine, and he is now making the courses available throughout 120 churches that the Bible League works in. A little over a year ago, we visited Tbilisi, Georgia. Now, that's not the state of Georgia, that's the country of Georgia, and they speak Russian. But they also have, actually Russian is a declining language there. They do have a Georgian national language. And so we met some people, and it's really great. You know, the thing we mainly pray about is that God will help us to find the right people in every place. Right. Because you could wander around in a place for years and not find the right people if God doesn't bring you to them. And we sat down with a pastor, and we always schedule several meetings in these places before we go. Then we get referrals when we're there, and we don't ever know for sure which ones are going to turn out to be the good ones. And sometimes you know pretty quickly that they're not going to be. But we sat down with a pastor of this very formal, looked almost like a Lutheran, very ritualistic kind of church, but it's an evangelical church. And his name was Varlam. And he was telling us, we were talking to him, and he said, well, there's actually an association of evangelicals here, evangelical churches, because we are by far the minority in this country, a lot more Muslims and other things. But we try to work together, and we've just been talking about the need for training. And so we said, well, who's the leader of this evangelical association? He said, well, I am. And we didn't even know that before we went. Since then, they have we followed up with them, and they were wanting to implement the training. And so we have printed the first course in the language of Georgia. Look at that print. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And the second course is almost done. And we have a translator now that she had been suspended from her job for a little while for Corona, and so she was translating for us. And they recently called her to come back, and so she contacted us and said, are you going to keep doing courses? If you are, I'll quit my job and just translate. And so we said, well, we've got 19 to go, so quit your job if you're willing to do this for the next 2 or 3 years. Kyrgyzstan, Nuria was a school teacher for 3 years, and she and her sister, which I'll show you in a minute, they've been very involved in ministry. And again, this is a country that's mostly Muslim, very small percentage of evangelicals, and ministry is difficult there. And these are restricted countries. People get punished sometimes for some kinds of ministry. But Nuria joined us a few months ago. That was her last group that she was a teacher of. She was an elementary teacher for 3 years, been through the university. But now her job for us is to travel around to churches, do teaching, and help get the courses started. She's also going out into villages. Now, this is a country, in the cities, many of them would speak Russian because they were part of the Soviet Union for a long time. But out in the villages, they speak Kyrgyz, and they don't speak Russian. And those are the places that need churches the most. There are churches in the cities. But many of those villages that could be 10, 15,000 people, they may have no church at all. Wow. And you can't just give them stuff in Russian because they can't read it. And so we're working now on the second course in Kyrgyz. The first one is being printed right now. And so these courses are going to be tremendously valuable. Nuria is helping in villages and places where they're trying to plant churches. She teaches groups out there. This is a youth group that she was teaching in one place. And this is another class in the city. They went through our course on cults and religions, which is talking about how to evangelize people from all these different kinds. So those are some of the things. That her sister is Kima, and she had worked with a student ministry for several years. And as soon as I met her, I realized that we needed her to be our international person, or at least our representative for that part of the world. And I continued to follow up with her. And this last fall, we were trying to get everybody together, figure out where we could meet. And we decided to meet in Turkey because with all Corona stuff, it's been really complicated to travel. And we had Kima come to that one as well, and our others. We had people from several different countries got together, did training, and I'll show you some more of those in a minute. But she is now with us full time, and she just sent me her plan for March. She will be going back to Turkey to meet with a pastor there who is a key leader in their training that they're doing. And she will be going to Kazakhstan, and she'll be going to Cyprus possibly in March. Just next month, she'll be in those 3 countries. And so we are very excited about what she's doing and the doors that God is opening. And so she'll be our representative for that part of the world. Russia is a huge country, and our first representative there was Sergey. And he had worked with the Bible League in the past, and he helped things get off to a good start, but he was diagnosed with cancer, and so he began looking for other recruits, and he found a father and son team. Michael in the middle is a pastor and a district superintendent, and his son helps him, Alexei, and they had already been using the courses in their church for a little while. They had been through a couple of the courses in their church, so they were really excited about them. And so he got them, and they came to be with us in our meeting in Turkey, and since then have been working with us, helping to get those going. Now, Russia is a vast area, of course, so we're praying that God will help give us the people we need. Sergey did pass away. Actually, he didn't come to the trip in Turkey, and we found out later that while we were in those meetings, he passed away. But we were thankful for what God has done in bringing us the people that can help. So as I travel around promoting Holiness Pilgrim, these are some of the things we try to raise money for, translations, and it would be difficult to exaggerate the impact that those courses can have, putting them into the national language. And a lot of these languages, not much of ministry material has been translated. So in many cases, we're going to have the chance to be first, to have some good ministry material available in those languages. So that means pastors in those cultures, in those languages. I'm going to show you some that are even more than Kyrgyz. A pastor, if they do not speak Russian or English, they are never trained in their own language because there is nothing in their own language. And so they just get what they pick up from others. And so the first training they ever get may be ours. And I'm talking people who are already in ministry, people who have been preaching for years, but have never had a ministry training book in their hands that they could read. And so the impact is just about impossible to even estimate. EFM, and we are working in many different places, and again, trying to get to the uttermost. Jesus said to go to the uttermost part of the earth.
Right.
And that means we should always be reaching. We should always be trying to go, not just settle down and do our best in one place, but to always be thinking. Now, I know he puts us as individuals in one place. Not saying don't put down roots and do your best in a place, but together we should always be finding ways to reach. Amen? And so that's what we are trying to do. Now, you just heard a little bit about China, and one of the things we can do in China, mainly through Brother Asbury, we have tremendous connections. If somebody wants to go there and teach in a school, we can set you up. It is a challenging role, challenging place to be, but it can be pretty exciting. We've had some people that came back with a lot of stories about how God helped them to share the gospel with people. And by the way, there is a huge number of people, 90%. Did you know that 90% of Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindus, 90% of them will never meet a Christian in their life. They will never at least get acquainted. Now, they may pass one on the street or know that somebody down the street is a Christian. But to really get acquainted and know a Christian, 90% of them will never know a Christian in their life.
Wow.
Now, you think about that. And so I really think God wants to call some people, even if you say, well, I'm not a missionary, I haven't even been to Bible college, I'm just a Christian. Well, maybe you ought to go be a Christian in a place where Christians are especially needed.
Right.
Think about that. And there might be hundreds of people that you'll be the only Christian they ever know.
Yeah.
And so that's a tremendous thing. And as Brother Asbury mentioned, we are looking for somebody. It wouldn't have to be part-time. It could be full-time, but it could be part-time. We're looking for a person. We definitely don't want to lose all those contacts that he has. And then there's lots more that could be done. China's a big place. Over 1 billion people, and much that could be done. The streets are our undercover missionaries in India. That's another place where you can't just go in and wear a badge that says missionary. And so they're on a business visa, and we are getting the courses translated into Hindi, Telugu, Punjabi, and Bengali. And all of those represent enormous populations. Hindi would be like 300 million people that read Hindi. And so it's so important to get this done, and we found some great contacts to do that. A new family that just joined us is the Davis family. Now, they have already been in India for about 10 years. As you can see or guess, Aradhana, his wife, was born there. And they adopted the 2 little girls. They were relatives of hers. And they've been married for, I think, well over 10 years. And they are now helping us to run a brand new institute in India. They have the building. It's a 3-story building. They live on 1 floor. We have another family helping that's living on another floor. And then we have about 12 young guys living on the 3rd floor, or the middle one of those floors. And these are guys that we have specially recruited to come in to go through some training and to spend possibly several years training them, and they'll be full-time with us during that time. And so they can be sent out to do preaching and teaching. We may be starting a little business soon that they'll help in, that'll help support things, and maybe help continue to support some of them. They can work in it after they graduate. And so this is an exciting thing, brand new thing for the work in India. Another brand new family is the Litchfield family, and they are already in Thailand. And Jacob, the dad, is a full-time student studying Thai in the university. He will graduate this year from a 4-year program. He wants to speak Thai very well, and they are already doing some preaching and teaching around the country. Liberia. And Liberia, I got to go to just a few years ago. Look where it's at. It's right under, and those black lines are to show where the 1040 window is, where 80%, about 3/4 of the world's population lives there, and 80% of them are unevangelized. Liberia would not fit that category, but it's very close to that area, right there on the west coast of Africa. And this is a typical Liberian congregation. They have some of the roughest roads, and I've been on some rough ones. But they have, it's maybe Loganov would be that way, but this is, it's just unbelievable. And there are things worse than bad roads, though. And that's something like this. That's a footbridge And some of those we went over, the bridge itself was a foot under the water. So the water had raised, but it was still better than not having it. Like this spot, there was no footbridge on this. I mean, these are some of these areas that trying to get back through there, I'm thinking, are you serious? We're really going to go through that? But we did, and it was fun. And this is an example of one of the villages we went to. And many of these people live in very primitive. They have cities there. Monrovia is a pretty good sized city, but when you get out, the rest of the country is covered with jungle, and the houses look just like that. This was a meeting. This would have been people that came from surrounding villages to gather in. These kids don't go to school because there's no school, and in most of these villages, there are no churches. So what are we doing? Shepherd Institute, this is headquarters, where we started out. We have this building rented, and we started out, our peak was about 50 students at one point that are studying there, and we have our own print shop, print the courses right there. They use English in the city. And we had our first graduation about a year ago, 19 students, and most of those are in ministry right now. In fact, one of them, I don't see her in the picture, but some of our graduates have just started a church about a month ago. Last week they had 55 people in their service. Wow. And so that's just one example. We're hearing about others. They're talking about their churches growing, people getting saved, people that have learned how to share the gospel and are getting people saved that didn't feel able to share the gospel before. And so that's an exciting thing. So we're calling it Shepherd Institute of Liberia, and we're doing it like a franchise, like McDonald's. And so if a local ministry needs an institute in that area, we can go in, we put up a sign, just like the big yellow M. We can put up the sign that says Shepherd Institute. Then it has their church name. So we're not First Assembly of God, but that's what that local church name is. And this is in Cape Mount. And I got to visit this place. They said there had never, now they call their states counties, what we would call a state. There are 15 in Liberia. They said there had never been a training institute in their state. And they said the state is majority Muslim. Now, Liberia is not, as a whole, majority Muslim, but they said their state is. And they are really excited about being empowered and equipped to go out and evangelize and start churches throughout this county. But one place we do not have to worry too much about violence and persecution and that kind of thing in this country. It is a nominally Christian country. And so this church, each of these institutes would represent over 10 churches. In fact, when I was visiting one of them, and sometimes I would have them, as they would introduce themselves, I'd say, tell me what church you're from. And the first 10 people that introduced themselves all gave different church names. And so there were, I know, at least 10 churches represented in that institute. So this is not just a local church. This is a group of students from several local churches that are attending here. We now have 15 institutes operating around the country. And the last 3 they opened, they had to travel to that region by helicopter to get out there because it would take a week to travel on the roads. And so they went by helicopter in a few hours, met with 3 different areas, and helped start 3 institutes. We have a tremendous team that travels around, and they what they call doing a launching. That's what they call starting the site. And they'll put up the sign. They'll spend a day of training, showing. We have a course of training on how to operate a local institute. And then we provide them with the courses from then on. They pay a little bit for the courses. We have to subsidize that. But they're just, these people, as I've traveled around and visited these sites, just one person after another gets up and talks about how thankful they are and how it's impacted their ministry and changed their preaching and how they understand things better than what they ever did before. One language that we are getting into in this country is Bassa, and that's what it looks like. There are about 500,000 people in Liberia that speak Bassa, and many of them are rural. They live way out in the jungle areas, and this is one of our Bassa Institute sites. We have at least 3, maybe 4 of our sites are Bassa sites. Now, many of these people don't read well, and not much has been published in their language. Many of them don't even have Bibles, but they learn to read somewhat. And so imagine the situation of a Bassa pastor, okay? Say he's a guy who he grew up, he got saved at some point in a church and attended under a pastor's ministry. He was under the ministry of a pastor maybe who didn't even know how to read, Never read a book in his life. But he listens to this guy preach. At some point, he begins to feel the call of God, and he becomes a preacher. What's he going to preach? What's he going to teach? He's got very basic, very elementary knowledge in his mind of the Scripture and of Christian beliefs, and much of what he thinks he knows may be wrong. And as we visited this place, one pastor got up, and he was talking about how he had learned what it means that we're in the image of God. That it's not physical, but it's the nature, and it's what God has built into us, the personality and the knowledge of right and wrong and that kind of thing. Now, we take all that stuff so much for granted. But he had just learned that in the Christian beliefs course. And we had others that they stood up and they said, I've been preaching for years, but I never understood what the Trinity really was. I never understood much of what I was preaching. And now it all is very clear to me. And so we have just 2 courses so far, and just 1 printed. But we have just 2 courses. The 3rd is underway in the BASA. They take a lot longer to go through it because some of them are actually developing their reading. And so for some of them, they are learning to read as they are going through our course. Can you imagine the Christian beliefs course, the first book they have ever read? It's like a primer, old-fashioned primer. Can you imagine the impact of that? How it will shape the religious understanding of the whole BASA culture for this to be available. This is our team, and we're excited about the job they are doing, and they operate there at the local site. We have classes all day every Saturday, and we have several teachers that teach there. But then the team also goes out to the distant places and helps get things going. A couple of those guys, the Husky guy there that looks like a football player, he's one of our IT guys, helps with the printing and computer work. And then a couple of them are teachers. And Pastor Blama, second from the left, was a Muslim before he got saved. About 8 years ago, he got saved. And he's now pastoring a church. And he's the one that with most of an evangelist heart. Everywhere we go, he strikes up a conversation with somebody and shares the gospel. And they'll have him share his testimony many times places we go. A brand new thing that we just have gotten into in Liberia, I became aware that the schools, even the public schools, they require Bible teaching. In fact, it's like this in a lot of countries. Ukraine's that way. And there are organizations that have responded to that, and they're providing material. Because, you're talking government schools. They may not even have a Christian there to teach. But the school is supposed to teach Bible, teach Christianity. And they don't know what to use. And in Liberia's case, the government very poorly funds these schools. So a lot of them don't even have textbooks. The teacher has a textbook. The students may not even have a math or English book. And so here's a class of 60 students, and the teacher writes on everything on the board. They write it down in a notebook, and the teacher's the only one with a textbook. And so I was thinking, well, what are they using for Bible? And so we developed a student edition of the courses. This was the first time we had done this. When we started out getting the courses done, at first we didn't do any student editions because most places were doing ministry training. And so like in these institutes, we don't want to give the students a lesser thing because they're going to take that using their ministry. So they need the whole thing. They need the same thing the teacher has because they're going to go teach it. And so we didn't do any student editions. But for high schools, those people are not trained for ministry. They don't need the whole thing. And so we thought, let's do a smaller edition and make that available. And so we hired a professional curriculum developer that works at GBS, Kristen Bird, most of you would have known. And so she's working on the 3rd one. And so we got the first one done just in time for me to print a few copies before I went over on this last trip. And so I visited 7 schools in one day. This is one of them. Some of these schools have 2,000 students. And so we sat down with the principal at each of those places. And we said, what are you doing for Bible? And most of them, they said, well, we are hardly doing anything for Bible. We don't know what to do for Bible. And so I'd show them our Christian beliefs course. And then I'd say, we've got the student edition as well. And if you are interested, we will have a training day. You can send whatever teachers you want to teach this. We will give them a copy of the teacher's edition. We'll make the student edition as cheap as we can. Or what we've done since then is given them something that they can run off themselves. And out of those 7 schools, almost all of them said, we want to do that. When will the teacher training day be? And so in January, we had the first teacher training day. We trained several teachers, and we have several schools that are now using it. Recently, our team went out and visited another 10 schools, because it looks like we could just walk into these places, show them it, and they'll say, yeah, we'll use it. And for the price of one course, and then a student edition that they can run off, we're going to impact hundreds of kids in that school. And so we already have, I don't know what the numbers are, but we may already have thousands of high schoolers right now going through our Christian beliefs course. So, I mean, this is just another brand new thing that is just going to spread like crazy. I hope every high schooler in Liberia can go through some of our courses by the time they're done. At our central building, this is our library. It's one room, and we have about another 15 boxes of books that we can't unpack yet. So for that and for other reasons, we really need our own place. We've been renting there now for 3 years, and it's been a good place. But we need to expand. We need to have a better library. We need more classrooms. And we need to own a place and stop paying rent. And so we recently started looking around, and we found this place. The owner had taken the roof off several years ago to put a second level on, and then he never did it. So it sat there like that. It's had some water damage, foundation and floor and stuff. But we think that we can work on it. We've had an engineer look at it, and we think we can build on with that and fix everything. And we are going to do a second level. And so we have bought this already for $20,000. We were very excited at the price on that. Right there, not just actually just a few blocks. We walked to it in about 5 minutes or 10 from our existing place. So we won't lose any of our current students, but this will become our new headquarters. We will open a bookstore and print shop there that we can make things available, print our own courses, of course, but then also print other things, have a sign there right there on a busy street to make it available. And I've got a lot of ideas about this place, but it's going to take more. I walked it off, but those rooms are pretty good size, but I don't know what, right there, there's 2 rooms right there, there's 2 side by side, those are pretty good size, those will be classrooms.
Okay. What, is it sand on the floor?
Yeah, they apparently, they were planning on doing a lot of more block laying and so on. That's a pile of sand that's been brought in for something, and then it's probably been sitting there a long time. So that's the project we're working on. We're really excited about the wall. The wall around the property it's there, but needs a lot of work, and so that'll be the first thing to do, just to secure it all, and then get a person to live in. There's a little building over to the side, a little block building that somebody could live in to guard it. So we'll get that started, and then go from there. Ivory Coast. I don't know if you guys remember last year, I told you about a guy came from Ivory Coast to visit me in Liberia. He went back. He has started the first Shepherd Institute in Côte d'Ivoire, which is Ivory Coast. And over the next few weeks, and everything was paused for COVID, but over the next few weeks, he's going to be starting some more. And that's for French. And we do have almost all the courses done in French. And so I have not been to that country yet, but I did get to meet him in person. This was his first class group. There in Dimbakro, Ivory Coast. Have you ever heard of Dimbakro? Isn't that a neat place? Kenya, we are partnering with some people there. This is a brand new institute that we have opened from a distance. We have the building there. Our budget for the whole thing is pretty small. They say they're expecting to have 100 students soon at this institute, and we're getting the courses as fast as we can push it. We are getting them translated into Swahili, and we can't keep up with the rate that they are, because they're studying, they're having classes like 20, 25 hours a week. And so they're going through the courses pretty fast, and we can't keep up on getting them ready. But that's the Swahili edition that is being used there. Nigeria, we have helped a guy. He's already been traveling around to villages, and so we helped him start the first institute. And so I began to talk to him because he was telling me about these other places that he's been going out to travel. I said, can you train somebody to help open there? And so we're making signs. We're going to do the same thing we're doing in Liberia. We're making signs. You'll post them and train local people. And we're going to set up his print shop and start doing the same thing there. I gave you this fact at the beginning. At the current rate of mission work, 3 billion people will not hear the gospel before they die. Now, sometimes some people are not stirred by big numbers, but because they can't, it's beyond our imagination, and it really is. But I'm thinking that most of you guys, you've been in ministry and you're able to think in this way, because these all represent real people. One other number I want to give you, at our current rate of mission work, 60,000 people born today will not hear the gospel before they die. And so that should give us a sense of urgency. I don't know where all those 60,000 are. Many of them would be in the Arab world or Asia. Will somebody get to them before they die? According to our current rate, nobody will. And so we can't just keep doing what we've always done. We're not going to get it done like that. We have to innovate. We have to train trainers. We have to train people near the unreached. So these are the things that drive me. I think about this every day. These are the things that shape what we're doing. And I don't think we can ever settle down to other kinds of goals that are not grappling with these facts. I think we have to be grappling with these facts of the unreached. And so may God give us wisdom and help us. We are looking for missionaries, and not only the typical roles of Bible college trainers and church planters and that kind of thing, but really almost anybody who is a professional in almost any professional occupation, such as computer programming or architecture or auto mechanics or whatever. We can place them in restricted countries to be occupational missionaries there. In fact, we can train a computer programmer to be a missionary a lot quicker than we can train a missionary to be a computer programmer. It's a lot easier. And so we're always going to need the people from UBC and GBS and Hope Sound and so on, the quote professional missionaries who really got the training and culture and so on. Those are the backbone of the work in a lot of places, and they can do some things that would not happen otherwise. But we also need a lot of people who come from a school that doesn't have Bible in its name, and can go in as a professional and work in a place like this. And so that's a wave not just of the future. It's already happening. Most of that 90% that I mentioned that will never meet a Christian, a typical missionary work is illegal in most of their countries. And so it's going to take an auto mechanic or a computer programmer who is there as a Christian to share the gospel. It's going to take that person to reach them. And so pray for us that God will give us the people that we need. Giving opportunities. These are all three about Liberia, because that's the field that we're pushing to expand right at the moment as far as investment. But some of your churches I've been in, and some of your churches give and help, and over the years you've been friends of the mission, and we really appreciate that. We thank you for the opportunity to share with you. Should we take a minute for questions, or
yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
We've still got time to get a break before the next service.
I got a question.
Okay.
So after these guys get through the course, then you get together with them and talk to them about, and you follow up with the preacher guys, or how you working that? Or they just have a graduation and it's over?
Well, some of them are staying in good contact with us. When I was there this last time, a lot of the graduates came back to be in a meeting to talk about things to do to work together for the future.
So do you give them a certificate, like some kind of a degree of completion or something?
It's a degree. It's a let's see, what do we call it? Diploma of ministry training. And we tell them it's not an academic degree. It's more like job training. Just like if you worked for a company and they put you through their training program, this is a ministry training program. So it's not an academic degree. We are working on that. We are going to have an academic degree soon there. But at this point, that's not something we can promise.
60,000 are in the U.S.
Yeah.
Probably none. Now, as far as the people who did the calculation.
I got people 70 years old that don't know who Jesus is.
Yeah. Well, certainly many in the U.S.
Never heard the name.
Yeah. Yeah, we've met, if you're doing outreach, you've met people like that. I'm thinking that the people who did the calculations, though, are thinking of places where they are not likely to even meet a Christian. So even though there are Americans that need to be reached, they're assuming, hopefully, that they are going to encounter a Christian in their life. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have two questions. One, what's how long it takes to get through. Second, the student edition of, for the teachers, the student edition. What? How does that come together? What does the student edition have?
Okay. Well, first question, it's a 2-year program if they stay on schedule. Now, if they miss classes, they may have to make up. Or some institutes like the BASA, they're going to run at a much slower pace. But our normal schedule is 2 years. The student edition, and we're not using that in the institutes because they need the whole thing. It's being used in the schools. It's just a scaled down. It has about 25% of the content that is in the whole course, and we make sure it includes everything they need for the assignments and for the tests. So the students can study just that. It helps the teacher out a lot to know that the student's got everything in his hands that he needs to study for the test. Don't have to do a lot of writing on the board.
So are the teachers using the full edition, or the students just have the shorter version, or how?
In high schools, yes. Yeah, the teacher will have the whole thing to teach from. That gives them a lot of expansion material, but the student has the amount that they really need. And those books, those student books, in fact, I have one right here. Now, a lot of them will just be photocopied stacks, but this is, when it's published, this is what it looks like. And so this will be a valuable, who knows how many hands these will end up in after that student has finished school. So they'll be valuable in themselves. Anything else? Yes.
What is, I may be missing something, what is the connection between the Holiness Pilgrim Missions, Evangelistic Faith Missions, and Shepherd's Institute?
Okay.
Thinking you bounce back and forth with, and I'm trying to wrap my head around.
Okay. It is, well, they're relationally connected. And you're not the only one. My own wife can't remember sometimes which one I'm talking about. But, okay, Holiness Pilgrim and Evangelical Faith are 2 separate mission organizations that I just work for both. And so they're only connected that way. Now, we use the term Shepherd Institute, and that's EFM's ministry in Liberia, is called Shepherd Institute. So it's our work, but now Shepherd's Global Classroom is the ministry that produces the material to begin with. And so it's a set of 20 courses. I work with them. I was one of the writers, and I still work with them. But it's kind of like a curriculum provider. So kind of like ACE, for example. So SGC, they don't have institutes. They help mission organizations have institutes. So it's kind of like if we were a taxi company and we all drove Lincolns for that taxi company. So Lincoln, their connection with us is simply that they provide us that. So that makes it more complicated.
What's been the biggest challenge for the Global Institute?
Well, finding the right people in every place is the main thing, and we've been really excited about the way God has done that. But there have been at least 2 countries that I've been to that we thought things were going to be up and rolling when we left, and it didn't happen. That was Belarus and Kazakhstan. Now, Kazakhstan, Kima is going to take care of that. They border, and people travel back and forth, and she's already got a bunch of connections, and she's going to be there in March. Belarus, not sure what to do. I went with our team once. We sent Andre back a time or 2. But that was our first one, actually. And we thought at that time that we could just go in, find a ministry that wants to do training, and we set them up and help them do it. Well, it's not that simple because it's a new thing. It's a new format. It's not Bible college, but it's not Sunday school. It's Bible college local, and they don't always understand how they could do that. And so we ended up, if we don't find a key person to be the leader there and to help establish it and get it going and be the representative, then it doesn't take off. And we didn't have that for Belarus or Kazakhstan. We thought we had it for Kazakhstan, but the guy fell through. And so we've been very thankful for the other places, Georgia, Moldova, Kyrgyzstan, and of course Ukraine. Possibly, we're hoping Turkey is going to happen, where God has given us key people that just, with tears in their eyes, they talk about how God must have sent us there. Because they have been praying for this need and they just see how it's going to meet what they need. So those are the people that we hope to meet when we go to a place.
Could this be translated into churches in America? Could we use it
Some are using it.
classrooms?
Yeah, there are churches using it, and Christian schools are using some. The student edition could even be used for Sunday school if you wanted to not, everybody not have to have their own full copy. Yeah, there are churches using them.
You mentioned, with the student edition, there in the school.
Liberia
Oh,
is,
yeah, that's it, Liberia.
mhm.
You said Ukraine also, they teach religious courses.
Mhm.
So, are you able to do the same thing in Ukraine?
We haven't tried there so much, partly because there are some Christian organizations who are doing really well in that Ukraine. There are some stuff, and they start even like with low grades. They've printed some nice colorful material for the low grades that teaches Bible stuff. So I don't know that, I wouldn't say it's all covered. I don't know that need is totally met, but there are some organizations that are working with that. But the schools we visited in Liberia, they acted like nothing, that they had nothing. So
It seems in some of those areas, you said that pastors may not even have Bibles, or
in our BASA classes,
Bibles into those languages, or?
there is a BASA Bible, but I just found this out when I was there, my last trip, that many of the students in our BASA institutes don't have their own Bible copies. And so and the teacher, the lady who has been setting it up, she wasn't sure how to get them. And so I looked into it, and we found out, actually, the guy who translated, he was on the translation team for translating the BASA Bible, is the same guy who's translating our courses. And so he's a very highly qualified guy. And he told me they're available for $10 a piece. And so I thought, wow, okay. I mean, that's a lot of money for them to buy a book. Very few people there will buy, that's like several days' wages for some people. And so we are raising some money. We're going to buy a bunch of them. Next month, we're going to buy a bunch of BASA Bibles, and we're going to sell them for like $1 or two, so that people give something to put a value on it. But that way, anybody who really wants a Bible, we want to provide it to them. So at that rate, we'll have to sell a lot before we make much money. No. But, no. All right. You ready for a break, Pastor Rick?
Yes, we are.
All right.
Thank you very much, Pastor